Imagine saying goodnight to your family, going to bed, and falling asleep only to wake up 11,730 days later. That's roughly 32 years, and the longest reported time that someone remained in a coma before waking up and having perfectly normal cognitive function but no memory of what had happened. The story of Karolina Olsson, also known as the Sleeper of Oknö or the Sleeping Beauty of Oknö, is truly one of the biggest real-life unexplained mysteries. What caused this coma? How did she survive? And was everything about the story as it seemed? Karolina was born in 1861 on the remote island of Oknö, just off of Sweden's eastern coast in the Baltic Sea. The second eldest out of 5 children, she had a normal childhood for the time, with no known health issues. The Olsson family lived a simple life. They were deeply religious, believed in witchcraft and curses, and relied on superstitions for daily guidance. In 1876, when she was just 14, Karolina came home after school, stating that she had slipped and hit her head while crossing a frozen river. Her father examined her, and while she had cuts and bruises on her face, she seemed to be fine other than having a mild headache. However, just a few days later, that headache grew unbearable, and with it Karolina developed a relentless toothache. The Olsson family were concerned the toothache was a sign of witchcraft, and ordered her to sleep, hoping to settle the matter and to get help in the morning. It was on this night that Karolina would fall into a deep slumber, not waking up for the next 32 years, at the age of 46. To put this in perspective, if this had happened 100 years later, then she would have fallen asleep the year Apple was founded, and the first personal computers were being created, and woken up after the iPhone was created and had taken over the world. After trying and failing time after time to wake Karolina up, her family resorted to desperate measures such as poking her fingers with needles and putting burning candles against her skin, but nothing seemed to provoke any sort of reaction. Lost and hopeless, they turned their energies to just keeping Karolina physically well instead. Her mother cared for all of her needs and gave her 2 glasses of milk a day to drink, a function that Karolina could seemingly still accomplish. But otherwise, all she did was sleep and sleep. Despite this, her parents believed that Karolina still possessed some inner awareness, as she once cried in her sleep right after hearing about her brother's passing. But Karolina didn't utter a single word, at least not in the presence of others. Later caretakers observed that she would occasionally moan and whimper in her sleep, but that was the only form of communication. If you're wondering why a doctor wasn't immediately brought to see Karolina, well, that's because Oknö didn't have one, and the trip to the mainland was quite expensive, one of the many challenges of living on a remote island. Karolina's father was a modest fisherman, just barely making ends meet, so the community had to gather together to raise enough funds to finally bring a doctor to the island. The physician spent multiple days examining Karolina, but was unable to figure out the cause of her mysterious state. In 1882, Karolina was diagnosed with a severe case of hysteria by yet another doctor trying to crack the case, and was recommended to undergo electroshock therapy. Karolina ended up being transferred to the city of Oskarshamn for treatment. However, she was released just a short month later when her parents didn't notice any signs of improvement and brought her back home to Oknö. Strangely, doctors noted that her hair and fingernails barely seemed to grow, and with that, as well as her perpetual sleep, hospital workers were left baffled. In the end, the family was told that nothing could be done and to just hope for the best. Years later, in 1904, Karolina's mother passed away and her father took over care. By this time, he was an elderly man and had to hire a housekeeper/caretaker to watch over his still sleeping daughter. The housekeeper had her own account of what took place and noticed a few unexplainable things, such as the fact that Karolina's hair never seemed to get dirty and that her nails were trimmed. She also claimed that pieces of candy that she brought to the cottage would often go missing whenever she walked away or stepped outside. Still, despite any suspicions that the housekeeper seemed to have, she never found concrete evidence of Karolina being awake, talking, or moving. After a few more years with the world passing by, Karolina suddenly woke up on April 3rd, 1908, at the age 46, but appearing much younger. Reportedly, she was initially in panic, burst into tears and was unable to recognize her now-grown brothers. The news of her awakening spread like wildfire, causing reporters and doctors from all over the world to flock to the tiny family cottage in Oknö. When questioned, Karolina was adamant that she had no memory of anything from the past 32 years of sleep, other than the vague dreams and nightmares. What the medical community found the most puzzling was the fact that Karolina seemed to have no negative side effects from being in such a long comatose state, other than the weight loss. Numerous tests were performed, all showing that she had normal possession of her cognitive abilities. 2 years after she woke, in 1910, a famous Swedish psychiatrist of the time, Harold Froderstrom, observed Karolina and came to the conclusion that she was suffering through some sort of a psychotic episode that may have been brought on by a traumatic event. He also seemed to think that Karolina's mother was an accomplice, aiding the girl in her scheme because she enjoyed the attention that the family was receiving. Whether this is true remains a mystery to this day, but it's important to account for the fact that miraculously, Karolina lived for another 40 years after waking up, all the way to 88, and always insisted that her story was true. If she had any, she took her secrets with her to the grave. What really happened to Karolina that day she fell on the ice, we will likely never know. And the public opinion seems to be split. Some believe that Karolina was a victim of abuse and her mind was corrupted as a form of self-defense. Others think that she was delusional, a fraudster, or maybe suffering from Klein-Levin syndrome, characterized by reoccurring but reversible periods of excessive sleep, which is caused by a traumatic brain injury or an autoimmune condition. There are valid points for every side, but so many questions linger. For example, if Karolina and her mother really did have some scheme, how was Karolina able to deceive so many physicians for such an extended period of time, or undergo electroshock therapy with no response? And if she really was asleep for 32 years, how could she possibly survive on just 2 glasses of milk a day? And most importantly, what caused her to suddenly wake up perfectly healthy as if nothing had happened? So what do you think? Is this just another unsolved mystery that science is unable to currently prove? Or is Karolina's story the tragic tale of a family's struggle with mental health issues and trauma? Do you have any strange sleep-related stories? Let us know down in the comments. And as always, stay cozious.